Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. I'm Raji Patterson. Glad to see you all. People are joining, but I think we can start now. Dear ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the International United Women Federation, I extend our warmest greetings and welcome you. It is my privilege to welcome our participants, fellow activists, and media. We greatly appreciate each person's presence. International United Women Federation is conducting this annual conference to bring attention to the importance of eliminating violence against women. Women's rights organizations play a crucial role in preventing violence against women and girls, driving policy change, holding governments accountable, and providing critical survivor center services around the world. We all need to come together, promoting the leadership and participation of women and girls in political, policymaking, and decision-making spaces from global to local levels, including development, humanitarian, and peace process. We have a great need to work towards strengthening our protection mechanism in order to prevent and eliminate violence, harassment, threats, intimidation, and discrimination against women, human rights defenders, and women rights advocates. Over these 16 days, we are calling on everyone to join us in the fight against gender-based violence. International United Women Federation is also working on the grassroots to conduct workshops and seminars among school children, women, and in the community. I cordially welcome our guest speakers, Soroya Dean, Karthi Vidya, Joan Lee, Jack Patucci, Behurin Pandachi, and Karen Levin. I would like to thank you all our guest speakers and participants for taking your time in attending this conference. I would like to thank Nishandi, Banu, and our precious team who worked very hard to bring the success of this conference and working towards this good cause. Thank you so much to all. Banu, over to you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Raji, and I echo her sentiments in terms of how the team has put together this event, number one, and number two, how our guest speakers have graciously accepted our invite. In fact, one of our first speaker is one of the most generous, I think, in terms of our timing. She is joining us at local time 1 a.m. So joining us from Sydney, Australia, Karen Levin is our first speaker for today's conference, and Karen is the founder and CEO of the Equanimity Project, based out of Australia. She's a rare combination of a thought leader and deeply compassionate giver. Her groundbreaking approach to solving domestic abuse combines beautifully with one of Australia's other big challenges, which is the financial empowerment of older women. She brings these two groups together in a mutually empowering project that impacts so many lives every day through the Equanimity Project. And she's going to be sharing with us a presentation on resilience and why trusting your intuition is so important to predicting dangerous situations. And once again, Karen, thank you so much for your commitment to be joining us live at this conference. And I know Karen personally as well when I lived in Australia, and I'm sure that this would be a great presentation and it would open a lot of eyes in terms of what she has to offer. So Karen, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. As mentioned, it's 2:00 in the morning, so which has been a real challenge for me. I don't think I've stayed up all night in a long, long time. I really had to think about what I wanted to talk about today, and I didn't want to do a whole proposal and presentation and formal. So I'll start off today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the Gadigal land on which I am meeting with you today, and pay my respects to the elders past and present, and also extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in case there are any involved in watching this today. I think what I really wanted to talk about was, as Manu said, the resilience of women. I am lived experience myself, and I lost 17 years of my life living in the United States. It was taken away from me, and I fortunately had Australia to come back to. But I was thinking about this today, or probably the last month, really what I was going to talk about. And I think that we need to understand, especially in Australia and the rest of the world, what women go through when we do go through a circumstance of abuse, domestic abuse. We don't, in the Equanimity Project, we actually don't speak about domestic violence per se. We speak about domestic abuse because the aspects of coercive control, the aspects of, you know, all the different areas that women go through now are becoming more apparent. And it's also becoming apparent that this starts in some cases, unfortunately, when women are quite young. So we need to address those things. We were actually going to launch, and the Equanimity Project, just if anybody doesn't know, equanimity is a very, very important word that's not used very often. It actually means that when there is chaos around you, it's the peace inside that you need to find in order to achieve clarity and in order to find yourself again. And it's embedded in most religions, spiritual beliefs, forms of yoga. It's quite an incredible word, and yet we don't use it enough. And for a woman who is going through any form of domestic abuse, it's actually what they need the greatest of. So I'm, you know, I put this together, and I guess in some ways, had I not gone through it myself, I wouldn't have put this concept together or wouldn't have realized this concept in the way that we have. So as Ben was saying, we deal with not only women who are going through domestic abuse, but we also deal with women who are at risk of homelessness. And that's not just older women. And I think it's not also just in Australia, it's anywhere in the world. What we're finding is the lack of gender equity and the lack of opportunities for women is really showing its color at the moment. And that's something that we need to address. Affordable housing, you know, is an issue in Australia. But we have, in the Equanimity Project, we have this this opinion and this view that women don't deserve to be thrown into social housing. We deserve opportunity, we deserve jobs, we deserve to live where we want to live, the way we want to live, and why we want to live there. And that is something that we do very well. I think we've done amazing. We're about to launch when COVID hit, and that meant we had to pivot just as the rest of the world did in the way that we presented and the way that we worked. We are lived experience, most of us are lived experience in the organization. We are very multicultural. We have serviced and also have workers and volunteers from probably every continent. And that's been just amazing for us to be able to combine all the experiences and the color of the diversity and culture in coming up with different ways of dealing with circumstance and situations. And that's something that we're very proud of. We don't look at your visa. We don't look at your circumstance of, you know, can you stay here? We look at how we help you in the story behind what has happened to you. And I think as women, the resilience of women is really shown in that we're kind of like a willow tree. You know, we can bend very far, but we don't break. We can come back from anything if we have a focus and a purpose and really understand our responsibility in moving forward. And that's something that is very driven in our programs, in our services, and in everything that we do. And please, if there's any questions, just interrupt, because as I said, I'm not doing a formal presentation. I don't feel that that's really necessary for myself. And, you know, statistics, I think we all see statistics every day in the media. We hear about it all the time, you know, and I don't think we need to know that anymore. We know that this is a problem. We know that women are being killed. We know that women are being abused. We know that women are being controlled. And I think as a voice and a federation, we need to come together, but we also need to come together in a way that really allows each story to be validated, to be born of its own. And that's one of the things that I find with a lot of the women that come through, is that they're not being validated. The stories are not being validated or believed. And I don't know if anybody has seen the Netflix show Unbelievable. And you should watch it if you haven't. It's quite an interesting show about a woman who was raped. And she was asked so many, many times what had happened to her that she finally turned around and said it didn't happen. And I think that's something that we really need as women, to stand by each other, to understand and validate the story of what happens to you when you go through it. I, just as an aside, and I won't go into it unless someone specifically asked me, but as I mentioned, I probably would be dead today had I stayed in the States. I tried to escape and change my life once, and he chased me around the world. So, we hear about this, we hear that it is the most important time, and the most important, when a woman leaves, it's the most important time. It's also the most important time for us to support them with whatever they need to get them through that time, and to give them some clarity, and to let them understand that they have a future. And I think that's where resilience comes in. We're amazing. Women are amazing. What we do, what we go through, the way we look after our families, the way we support, we can make decisions, 5 decisions at once. We're incredible. And for some reason at the moment, I think we're broken in so many ways. We're not coming together. We're not respecting the strength that each of us have. I find it really sad when you have women, especially in diverse cultures, where they don't want to speak to their friends. They don't want to speak within their own groups or their own communities because of the gossip, because of the judgment. And if we could just start by not judging and not becoming, to really be aware of our unconscious bias when you listen to someone's story, and to understand that for whatever reason that person hasn't been able to find the clarity they need during that time, then it's going to be a lot easier for them to heal, to move on, and to find peace of their own. We have some very interesting stories, and I don't know how many people are from Australia in this group or have been to Australia. I know Banu has. But we have a beautiful country here, and I'm very blessed to at least be home for me where I was born. And I think the greatest thing was that when I came home, I was stripped of everything. I left everything I owned, even my photo albums from when I was a child. So my mother was not really happy with that one. But I started again, and it was actually a recession at the time. And it was a recession around the world. And so I knew that I had to just keep going and do what I had to do, and trust that I was part of something greater than myself. And I think that that's a very, very important thing that, we need to understand. And my very first client, because my background is in law and business management, my very first client was actually going through domestic violence herself. And she's still a client today, which is over 25 years later. And I think that shows you that the camaraderie that women can have with each other is very strong and very long. It's a long journey that we go on to heal. I think that, I would really love to see us come together more. I unfortunately hear too much judgment going on, and too much competition amongst not-for-profits and organisations for government funding. That really saddens us, because we actually step back. We are not government funded ourselves. We've done everything on our own, and very proud of that. But it's also what's going on in the system. I don't know what happens in other countries, but I know with some of the larger organisations here, there's a lack of transparency. There's a lack of honesty, and we need to be more accountable in everything that we do. And one of the things that I find, and I think this is happening in most countries around the world, is that when we speak about affordable housing, we speak about social housing, we speak about community housing everywhere around the world. As I said to you in the beginning, not all women want to live in social housing. We want to live where we want to live, how we want to live, and have a job and have an income and have an opportunity. But I find that that's not happening. And organizations like Airbnb need to be held accountable. I think it is something when you come up with an idea that makes a lot of money for somebody, but no one looks at the social impact 10 years down the line. No one looks at how that affects a culture. No one looks at how it affects humanity and housing. And I know in Australia right now, we have over 1 million empty houses that are sitting empty. So it's an issue that we're raising, and it's an issue that's in conversation constantly at the moment as to how to deal with that. And I know that this is happening around the world because a lot of countries are bringing in a vacant tax. And it needs to be addressed. If you're in any organizations that are trying to help women have a roof over their head, have a look at how many empty properties you have in your city or in your country. It is something that we need to address as human beings. And I think, I don't know. I mean, I did plan to really do a presentation. So, okay, we've got a minute left. Great. So I thought I could talk through this quickly. But I think that we really do need to come together and, really decide on what we want and try and raise a voice up. I'm glad to see this federation was formed, recently, and it would be good to see it bring policy, change things with the UN. I don't think the UN is as amazing an organization as it is. They go on research, and research is old. And the only way that they're going to know what's happening on the ground now is if we raise the voice of foot soldiers and community and people that are actually in the communities doing the work that needs to be done every day. I don't think you can just rely on research in order to do a forward act. You need to look at what's going on in your country, in your community, in your local area, in your state. And that's what we do very much. We travel around, we go out, we talk to people, and that's where we're achieving more goals than trying to listen or look at just the research. I think I'll stop here in case there's any quick questions, but thank you, Vanu, and thank you so much for letting me open this. As I mentioned, it's about 2:15 right now, so 2:18 in the morning. So thank you. And I'm going to try and stay on as long as I can to listen to everybody else.
Appreciate that, Karen. We're truly humbled that you joined us. And I have heard of your personal story, and it's just so powerful to realize that sometimes we think just going to another country will save us, but having that fear kind of following us through, and more than the fear, the physical violence that ensues and things like that. So thank you again for sharing your story. One question I did want to ask you was the financial aspect of things that you do in your organization, just to shed a bit more light on that side. Do you have any quick thoughts, only because we're short on time, but any quick thoughts around what women can do when they're going through something like this? Of course, your physical safety is your primary goal to get out of the situation safe. But right after that, when you said you were starting from scratch, when you moved back to Australia, do you have any initial tips on what women can look out for to start getting back on their feet?
I think that comes out of the resilience part. Women are far more skilled. I think we need to review the skills of women. We run households, we run budgets, we create food. There are many skills women have. And I think that's something that we do with our women as well. We look at their skill sets. And I think when you really start breaking down the skill sets of women, you start looking at opportunities that are available to them in the market. And that's what's quite amazing, is that we ourselves need to recognize our own skill sets. And I think that's very, very important. And whether it is that someone did a bachelor in another country but has come here you can convert the skills. And so it is a lot of that. It's about looking at where you can access finance, but where you can access jobs. And a lot of it is networking, knowing people, knocking on the doors, never letting, you don't stop when someone says no, you just keep going till you get the yes. It's just persistence, it's resilience, it's, getting, like I said, validating the stories, making people listen to the stories. We're about to start a very, very interesting podcast that is not media driven. So that'll be coming out in the next couple of months. And I think that that's what's really important, is that we need to listen. I'll just end with this. I recently spoke at TAFE here, which is a school. And one of the students said to me, what's probably the biggest skill that we need to learn? And I said, that is to listen to our clients, to listen to the story, to look at their actions, to look at their movements, to look at their body language, to not just listen with our ears, but to listen with our humanity. And I think that's what we're going to be able to connect with and heal and to serve better. And I think that's the same with finance. You can listen to someone and get them into a job, let them feel that they're capable. We're capable. We're highly intelligent women. I don't know about other countries, but in Australia, 74% of women that go through domestic abuse are highly intelligent. So 74%. So it is, someone's tried to control them and take that away. So it's letting them feel they have their power back. And that's where you get into the jobs.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Karen. And as you said, feel free to stay on as long as you can, but we understand if you need to log off and get your beauty sleep.
I get up at 6 o'clock normally, so I have to try and get a little bit.
Of course. Once again, thank you so much. And before we move on to our next speaker, I wanted to mention two things. One is that we will be sharing the speakers' bios as well on our social media. So if you want to know more about them, we are starting with a very short description of them here, but there's a lot more to learn about them. We will try to keep sharing some of their profiles and links through the chat box as well. So do keep your eye on that. And the other thing was, if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them on the chat box as well. If we do have time, we'll go through them. If not, we're going to make sure that we'll reach out to the speakers after the event and still promote their responses back to you. And with that, I just quickly wanted to shift our focus on IUWF just because we wanted to share with you what we do. Sorry. Apologize for that. Give me 1 second. Okay. We wanted to give a quick intro about IUWF, which stands for International United Women's Federation. We wanted you to know more about the organization. We're relatively young, but we do have very high hopes of what we can achieve. Some of our visions are listed here. We do support gender equality. We want to work towards the empowerment of women, and we want to make sure that we're protecting women's rights in as many countries as possible. In terms of our mission, we are doing a lot of work through conferences and groundwork as well. There are lots of projects that we are working at through the developing underdeveloped and underprivileged communities, and we are looking at some of those disadvantaged people. I apologize, such as widows, single parent families, and stigmatized individuals. Just to share some of our statistics as well, it's a quick dashboard that we have put together. If you think about the time that we have been alive since May 2021, we have been able to accomplish a lot of things, and we're really proud about that because we're completely volunteer run, and the kind of donations and the work that we're doing is entirely because of people's passions. So if you think about the number of workshops that we have put together, we have had 3 of them. We have established 5 different world record events. We had conferences on women-related topics, and not last but not the least, we've had about 15 projects that we have completed at a community level. And here on this slide, we have a few projects that we went through that are listed here. So you can see that not only are we looking at helping women, we're also looking at saving the environment, promoting some good practices in the community. And if we can bring both of those together, why not? So we're constantly looking for ways to not just uplift women, but we're trying to uplift women with positive impacts on other areas as well. So if you are interested to join our organization, please drop us a line. We will be sharing our contact information towards the end of the call. And also we would be reaching out to people through social media. So if you're interested in joining us, please feel free to let us know. And with that, I think we're in good time to move on to our next speaker. And that is, so to introduce Soraya, she's an award-winning Muslim feminist activist, lawyer, founder of Muslim Women Speakers. There are so many accomplishments here, Soraya, so I'm really proud to bring you on stage. She's also the co-chair of Women's Working Group of the International Religious Freedom Roundtable in DC. She's on the advisory board of #Faith in Action, which is USA's largest clergy organizing network that gives people of faith the tools that they need to fight for justice and work towards a more equitable society. Soraya is the 2019 recipient of the Los Angeles Impact Maker Award, and her work prioritizes organizing women to dismantle the supremacy of patriarchy and religion-based oppression, dominance, and violence. Today, she's joining us from Los Angeles, and she's going to be speaking to us about an issue that has recently captured the attention of media worldwide, lessons from the women's revolution in Iran and what it teaches us about many forms of gender-based violence. Soraya, over to you.
Thank you, Banu. Beautiful introduction. And also a deep thank you to Raji for bringing us together every year and for her unwavering commitment to highlight women's challenges across the world. President Jimmy Carter reminds us the abuse of women and girls is the most pervasive and unaddressed human rights violation on earth. The abuse of women and girls is the most pervasive and unaddressed human rights violation. And my talk is going to confine to the lessons we are learning from the Iranian revolution. The Iranian women are speaking up. They are telling us it's time for our recital, not our rehearsal. And this is a call for, I think, every woman out there, that we have to now come together and unite and speak up. It's time for our recital, not for our rehearsal anymore. And at the intersection of religion and gender violence, it's a very challenging place. And I've worked for 15 years at that particular intersection, because most of the theologies have been abused by corrupt leaders, by patriarchal structures, and religious actors. It has nothing to do with our theology. So I always have to qualify myself to say, I have to fight the abuse of my theology. You know, when people say this is what Islam says, and it is up to me to really stand up and say, no, this is not what it says. And it is only a patriarchal interpretation based on functional distinctions that women had to endure centuries ago. Times have changed. I remember this story where Einstein was walking, he was working in the 40s, he was working at Oxford Union, and he had just given a test to his students. And he was walking the halls of Oxford with his assistant, and the assistant said, Dr. Einstein, this is the same test you gave your students last year. And Einstein responds, he says, yes, the test is the same, but the answers have to be different. But unfortunately for women of faith, the answers are the same. You know, a Bill of Rights from the 7th century is read to women and they are told to comply. And today, my Iranian sisters are speaking out loud. And I think we have to remember their words. Women, life, freedom. Women, life, freedom. So in Iran, let's get to Iran because that's my specific topic. Today, for weeks, the protesters are continuing to be tortured, to be raped, and even sentenced to death. And you know what, my friends? The offense is wearing an improper hijab. I mean, this blows me. You know, I think I'm very privileged to sit here and talk about it. I am very sad that I'm not on the streets with my Iranian sisters. So for wearing an improper hijab, women are being tortured today. And why could this be? This is also because the silence of majority of good people. Because we think we don't have to talk. This is where somebody else will talk about it. But we have to be very clear as we move forward. Any threat to any justice is a threat to, any injustice is a threat to justice everywhere. We have to remember that. So I will take a moment and ask Banu to show a short video because I have identified for the 16 days of action, 16 days of specific violences that is meted out to women, particularly across the world in the name of religion.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Soraya Dean. I want to talk to you about religion-based violence against women of faith. We must all collectively come together to call out the abuse of our theologies that perpetuate violence against women. My work takes me to the margins, where I live, listen, and learn from the women and girls at the margins. My life changed dramatically the day I met Shama, a 16-year-old child bride in Bangladesh. Please know that women are victims of harmful practices that perpetuate violence and gender inequalities in the name of religion. Single, narrow, ideological religious perspectives have blinded critical thinking, leading to the subtle, complex, often hidden and legitimized multi-layered discrimination, oppression, domination, and violence against women of faith. Here are the 15 acts of violence. Child marriage, polygamy, discrimination, female genital mutilation, honor killings, patriarchy, excluding women from leadership and scholarship, period monitoring, forced marriage, forced hijab, forced segregation, guardianship laws, curbing women's access to education, denying women's leadership and scholarship in religious space, misogyny, and femicide.
Thank you, Banu. Yes. So today, I want to talk about a blueprint. You know, for a building, when we build a building, we need a blueprint. Without a blueprint, if we build a building, what will happen? It will crumble. It will be shaky. It won't be very functional. So I want to talk about a blueprint for what we can do as organizers, activists, and gender justice advocates. One is that we have to unite in the sense that we must organize. Organizing is not mobilizing. Organizing is different. We come together and organize to build power. We find out within the people we bring together. The first question we need to ask is, who are our people? And when we bring together the people, we have to understand the power we have in order that we can negotiate with the other side who holds the power that we need, and then take meaningful action with the resources we have available. So this is very critical because, as Karen said, lots of things are being debated at the UN and DC and all major cities. That is advocacy, my friends. That is why we are in the same boat hundreds of years later, because we have not sufficiently mobilized ourselves on the ground. So if we want change, we have to bring together like-minded people and talk about issues that impact them, and then take meaningful action. And moving forward, if you look at Iran, it'll never be the same. It'll never be the same. People have mobilized. Now they are going to organize. What I heard yesterday was they're going to review the laws of forced hijab. That's a huge victory, but it's a sad victory. In this age and time, do we have to kill ourselves, die to be able to see and to be heard and to challenge mandatory garments? But that is the reality of the people there. And whenever I come to the play to talk about religious freedom, I have to be very grateful for the country I live in, and that is the United States of America. There's incredible amounts of freedom for us to speak, challenge, question, debate, and discuss any issue that impacts women's freedoms, whether it be at the crossroads of religion or not. So my first blueprint is that let us organize. When we go back, how many more women can we bring to this cause to combat gender violence, which shows its ugly head in many forms? So how many more people can we bring together to join the movement is critical. Movement building is critical. The second blueprint is that we have to not shy away from questioning antiquated religious laws and received theologies. We have to really be bold and courageous to ask the right question. We have to challenge our religious actors. We have to really address patriarchy in a big way. Because patriarchy in the religious, in the theological arena is about valorizing a woman's body. It is about whether she can divorce or not, whether she can have an abortion or not, whether what she needs to wear, what she needs, how she needs to show up as framed by the patriarchy. And this has to be challenged, my friends. And this is very critical because one of the most under or unaddressed human rights violations is the violations meted out to women who are women of faith. This is very critically important. And not to be silent. I work very deeply in interfaith circles. On one of my visits to Sri Lanka, they were practicing female genital mutilation on women. We are like the 19th country in the list for the number of women who are subjected to FGM. And in the evening, I heard this. In the evening, I saw real interfaith actors coming together at a reception, and they are talking about the best things in what is happening in their communities. And I said to some of my colleagues, I mean, to address this challenge of FGM in these theological circles. But it was a vain call because people don't want to talk the real stuff that needs to be spoken. So who will be talking that? I mean, if I am bothered about that, I feel that I'm the only one who talks about it, you know. But today I see over 50 women. We have to challenge this. We have to address this. We have to talk about this. Because we should not shy away from this. Because why are we doing this is not just for women, but to advance God's vision for us, which is of mercy and love. And when we don't call out those atrocities, we downplay God's vision, the larger vision, yes. And look at what's happening in Afghanistan. We are not making this up, you know. These are facts before us. Women are told they can't go to school. And in my country, Sri Lanka, there is a move by some religious actors to legalize polygamy and child marriage. I mean, so these are happening because without any contextual reality of what is on the ground. So context is critical for everything we do and how we perceive everything. So the third blueprint I want to talk about is, this is very critical, my friends, because as Karen said, equanimity is lacking. Equanimity is to stay without reaction. How can we be present in a magnificent way and to address things in a very loving way? Because there is severe polarity on all issues. Just as much as I have a place to advocate for gender equality and to eradicate gender-based violence for my women and sisters, for women, the religious actors on the other side, they believe they're advancing God's word. in trying to cage us into a situation, a theology, a culture, a tradition that has no meaning today. But they are also coming from a space of we are doing God's work. So the polarity in anything you go forward to work, please recognize the polarity of the solutions and try to come to a middle path where in this situation, I would talk about advancing God's vision for mercy for us. No, we talk about mercy in all our religions. But where is the mercy when we are doing such things? So we as activists, as women, as resilient women, we have to advance that equanimity, resilience, understand and recognize the polarity. Dr. King was very clear when he said, you cannot influence anybody whom you hold in contempt. We cannot. So we have enough reasons and enough people to hold in contempt. But I think, as Karen said, we have to go deeper and do our inner work first before we come to this work. So this is very critical. And how do we do that? I think that added to that third blueprint is our public narrative. We have to start telling our stories. We have to visualize it. We have to be active in media. And I don't know how many of you are on social media. I really ask every one of you to take your phones while you're listening, go to Twitter or Facebook and write a simple post of what you're taking away and talk about Raji, who has brought us together again and again and to advance this cause of eradicating gender-based violence. So as we are gathered here, and my time is limited, I want you to really emphasize that we must organize like-minded people. There will be a time you might invite 10, 20 people for a meeting, but by the fifth meeting, only 5 showed up. And that's fine. Those 5 are the meant to be ones, but find 5 others who are meant to be. Don't lament about the 15 who left. This is critical. This is what we teach in community organizing. And that's what I teach, how to organize your community for action, how to leverage the power you have so that you can use the resources you have so that you can get what you want. And this is committed work, long-term work. So the second blueprint I want to reiterate is let's question antiquated laws and receive theology. Question it for yourself, question it for your sister, question it for the community, question it for the world. Write something about what's happening for women who are crying today for womanhood, life, and freedom. I think we'll be remiss if we don't, because my friend Marcia Alinijad, who heads this whole fight from the United States, she wants us to remember the Iranian women on a daily basis, write something about them, support, because our word emboldens them and empowers them. And the third and the most important thing I shared, I want to reiterate, is recognize the polarity. When we come to do social justice work, there's severe polarity. And no matter what, try to get to the middle path. And I want to finish with Dr. King's words. He says, justice, my friends, is love in action. So if we want justice, I think as women who are resilient and as women who are part of the International United Women's Federation, we have a special mandate. And I leave you there. If there are any questions, I will take them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Soraya. Very, very uplifting words. When we put some of these social injustices in the perspective of love, it just makes so much more sense. And that last quote that you said just resonated so well, because ultimately it's just about us showing love to our fellow human beings. There's nothing more to it than just being respectful of each other and showing love. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them on chat and we will be moderating those. I did have one question for you, Soraya. And this is something that I had to grapple with growing up as well, is the good girl terminology or the tag, right? So all those different actions that you said, ask the question, look out for what's happening around you, raise your voice. all these things are generally attributed to someone who's not a good girl. So how do we do you have any tips on how do we break that mold within our own head? So there is one thing where we have to break the gates that are surrounding us in terms of our community, but how do we get beyond those gates that are in our head?
Oh, wow, fabulous question. In community organizing, this is the crux of what we teach. Self-interest is critical. If you go in your churches, in your homes, in your schools, we are always taught to be selfless. Okay, that's good. There's a time and place for that. But we have to really understand our self-interest. Why am I here is what I ask. I am here because I love Raji, yes, but I'm here also to advance my message. I want to share it with 50 other people who are on this call today so that they resonate, they go back and do something, and they connect with what we are talking here. So why are you doing what you're doing? And understand your self-interest and do not feel guilty, because people like to send you on a guilt trip, So I would say we women, we are known for always giving from an empty cup. I think we can do that. We have to fill the cup. And when we are filled, we can give more and we can do more. So my message on that is very critical, my friends. Understand your self-interest. Your self-interest is based on your values and your vision. Okay, and that will give you, these are one-day workshops, but I'm just trying to sum it up. Understand, why are you here? You're here for a larger cause, not just to eat, drink, sleep, and do mundane things. You have a gift to do something more, and that doing something more depends on you understanding and recognizing your self-interest, what ticks you. So don't feel guilty.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. And with that, we will move to our next speaker. Thank you so much again, Soraya. And our next speaker, often we misunderstand that violence against women is a topic reserved for women, right? Just as Soraya was just sharing with us. However, it's equally important for our allies to rise up against this inequality as well. So we're super pleased to welcome one of our allies, Behran Bandarchi, who was born in Tehran, Iran. He migrated to Canada as a young adult. He is a registered nurse right now, specializing in mental health and addiction at the Canadian Mental Health Association. Behran is joining us today to talk about the human rights crisis that's taking place in Iran. And as an Iranian, he's here to amplify the voice of the Iranian people, especially women who have been the main victims of the ruling tyrant regime. Thank you so much for joining us today, Behran, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Bonnie, and good morning, everybody. I really appreciate the time that the opportunity that you've given me to kind of be able to be the voice of people in Iran, and especially women, and what's been going on for the last 3 months, and kind of a collective trauma that we all kind of been going through inside and outside of Iran. And thank you, Soraya, for kind of shining a light of what's happening there. And it's kind of heartwarming to see that other people are hearing and seeing what's going on in Iran, and trying to kind of amplify the voice of what's happening. So with that, I'm just gonna I guess share my screen to kind of go over a few slides to share with you. And if you have any question, feel free to kind of drop it in the chat, and I'll be more than happy to answer if I can. Just gonna share my screen here. All right. Okay. So yeah, as Soraya said, this is all about women, life, freedom. These are the 3 words that sum up what's been happening in Iran over the last 3 months, and the Iranian diaspora have been chanting these words in solidarity with people of Iran and what they've been going through, especially the brave Iranian woman. To just kind of give a little bit of a background about the situation of women in Iran and the limitation that they have on their rights and freedom since the Islamic Republic took power in 1979. Day by day, Iranian women keep being discriminated against in society, and their rights and freedom been jeopardized. And here are just some of the examples that demonstrates this immoral conduct towards women. Women and children are properties of men. The value of a woman's life, half of the life of a man. The testimony of the woman is equal. The testimony of two women is equal to the testimony of one man. A woman doesn't have the right to divorce her husband. Women can't travel, work, or go to school without the husband's permission. Mothers do not get the custody of their children when the husbands divorce them, and the list goes on and on. But right now, at this stage, the Iranians, in particular the women that are standing against the atrocity of the regime and its ruling. So what kind of ignited all of this movement in Iran and these recent rallies that are distinct from any other previous movements and probably unheard of throughout history? Iranian women have always been present in national uprising, but this time they are leading them, making this the first women-led movement in history of the region. The rallies erupted following the death of Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old Iranian, on September 16, a Kurdish girl who died shortly after she was arrested by Iran's morality police for allegedly violating the country's hijab law. Mahsa was declared brain dead just hours after reports spread that she was beaten and arrested by morality police in Tehran for not complying with the country's mandatory hijab rules. Apparently, according to the Iranian officials and the government, it's immoral to show a little bit of hair, but it's not immoral to take one's life. But now this has begun. Now what began as protests against the brutal enforcement of the mandatory headscarf has now snowballed into one of the biggest threats to Iran's clerical establishment, which has ruled since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. I'm going to go over a few people and a few lives has been lost out of many. Over the last 3 months, over 500 people have been killed by the regime. Among them were more than 50 innocent children, and there are hundreds of kids whose lives had been traumatized by losing their sisters, brothers, mothers, and fathers during the unrest. Kian Pirfalak, a 10-year-old boy who was on his way home with his father, was shot dead in the family vehicle by government forces. Kian was an inventor, and his dream was to be a robotic engineer, and now he and his dreams are buried under the soil. And the other event, the regime security forces carried out a deadly crackdown in Zahedan, a southern city in Iran. Hasti Nurai, a 7-year-old girl, was hit in the head by a tear gas canister that made her unconscious. Subsequently, as she lay next to the canister, as it releases gas, she was suffocated and died shortly. The regime had also detained so many people, about 20,000 people, and some of these detainees are now facing death penalties for protesting their rights. Nilufar Hamidi, an Iranian journalist who reported on Mahsa Amini's death, is now in solitary confinement with no information about the charges against her amid a major crackdown on the press in the country. The official denied a report by a human rights group that the trials had already begun without a lawyer of detainees' choices. Many of these detainees have severe physical health conditions, which are neglected by the officials and are not even attended to. Among also these detainees are the rapper artist, Tumait Salehi, a 31-year-old male, who released clips of raps in support of the unrest, which was sparked by the death of Mahsa Amini. Now the regime has accused him of spreading propaganda, cooperating with a hostile government, and incitement to violence, according to the regime judiciary official. We are all worried about thousands of people like Tumaj and Nilufar who were arrested for speaking the truth and choosing to stand with the women in Iran and choosing to take the right side. They should not be in prison and punished for exercising their basic human rights and asking for freedom. As stated a little bit by Soraya, also as part of what we are all kind of protesting for and what we kind of want everybody to know. It's absolutely important for everyone to know that Iranians right now are not only protesting the compulsory hijab, they're protesting gender apartheid, forced confession, unfair trial, extrajudicial killings, lack of free expression, torture, government corruption, child marriage, funding terrorism, and fighting autocracy. Iranians officials have been even providing missiles to Russia to use them against Ukrainian people, and they've been throughout the last few years, and they've been supporting all the terrorist attacks in the region too. So this is not only an issue in Iran, this is the whole issue for the region and the danger of this regime that's ruling at this moment in Iran. It's unfathomable to think that over 40 years, women have lost so many of their rights in Iran, a country that has the world's very first Declaration of Human Rights on its record, is now one of the worst to violate them, and they infringe tyranny and torture on their own people, on their own women. Remember, this is not a foreign invasion. It's a killer cancer from within. Right now, Iranian women and girls have been standing up for their rights in the face of inequality and oppression, and they have great merits and capabilities. Despite all the restrictions, they managed to make up more than 60% of university students. They excel in many sports. Many of them are lawyers, doctors, writers, and poets, and a role model for younger generation. Despite being arrested and tortured for standing up against discrimination, Iranian women and girls have never bowed down to oppression and oppressors. And now they are the brave heroes leading the protests and demanding for their voice to be heard at all costs, for they have little else left to lose. They are demanding their place in society. They are demanding their basic human rights. And the world is watching. We all must hear them, see them, and be their voice. For the last 3 months, many Iranians and non-Iranians across the world have been trying to be the voice of people in Iran, especially the women. We are all demanding that international human rights organization and world leaders seek justice. This is a critical moment for leaders in the international community to vocally demonstrate their support for women's rights by standing in solidarity with Iranian women and girls, by holding the regime accountable for violation of human rights in Iran. It was only a week ago that UN Human Rights Council voted on the resolution to establish a fact-finding mission to investigate alleged human rights violation in Iran. Many countries in the world, including Canada, have started taking actions to prevent senior members of the Iranian regime from finding safe haven in their countries. Among them, the official from Iranian Revolutionary Guard Forces, also known as IRGC, which is now widely recognized as a terrorist organization. But this is just the beginning. A lot more needs to be done. We are all hoping that all Iranian diplomats are dismissed from countries across the world. These diplomats are representative of the oppressive regime in Iran and have been spreading the regime propaganda around the world. They are not the voice of Iranian people. The message of Iranian are loud and clear to anyone who's witnessing these rallies, and that message is regime change in Iran. And in the end, the 2022 uprising already constitutes a tremendous victory. No matter how it ends, Iran has already changed irrevocably. The present confluence of the movement for women's rights, civil rights, and minority rights, combined with the support of the general population in both the middle and working classes, has brought Iran to the verge of pronouncing a death sentence on the theocratic regime that has ruled for more than 4 decades. This is a tremendous movement which shows the resiliency and bravery of Iranian women. And let this be a reminder that in no country are freedom and liberties are guaranteed. Women's rights are human rights, and we must defend them by all means globally. Thank you very much, everybody. I guess what I'm like really hoping to convey here is to see what's going on in Iran and be the voice of Iranian people as much as you can, and try to spread the word in any way possible. If you know anyone that are capable of making some change in some of the international laws and rulings, to be able to spread this word as much as we can. Iranian people, especially the women, needs to be heard. They need to be seen, and they need to be free. And I know this is probably not the end, but it's definitely a beginning to an end. I guess I'm just gonna finish up with what I started with: women, life, freedom. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Baran. And I think if we were physically together in one location, you would have experienced the heaviness that the audience is feeling right now. I was just messaging my colleagues here, just saying that, you know, how sad I felt looking at that presentation, because it's precious lives lost over things that, you know, don't really matter as much. And also how but I could sense in the way that you were delivering the presentation how difficult this topic must be. And along those lines, I wanted to ask one question. Yes, we should stand together with the people and the suffering that they're going through. But apart from that, how do you think a common person, for example, if I had a colleague who was going through this, or they were sensing something that was happening in their homeland and they were feeling down, do you have any tips of what we can tell them and how we can comfort them in terms of their psychological safety as well? Because we want to make sure that they're feeling comfortable and they have the right kind of avenue to express themselves too.
That's right. So, like in my workplace, like my coworkers and colleagues have been super supportive. Just even hearing them out, it's a lot of help. It's a huge help to take a little bit of a load off. Every single day that we keep receiving and watching the videos from Iran, it's like one tragedy after the other. It's lives of 13-year-old, 12 years old, 10 years old, 17-year-olds. And they're all brilliant people, and they're all super talented people, and they all have hopes and dreams that are taken away. And it's hard to kind of keep watching these every day that's happening, and just being there to listen to them, it's huge. And also trying to kind of help to spread this around and to recognize what's happening in Iran, and just provide that support means a lot. I know there isn't much that can be really done from outside of Iran, but just the awareness, just that people can show. There are so many artists all across the world, celebrities and all that have been posting about Iran, that have been providing their support in Iran. When Iranian people inside Iran see this, they know that what they're doing matters. They know that what they're doing is being witnessed, and they know that the world is watching. And they are aware now of what's happening, and they're aware of all the violation of human rights that's happening in Iran. And just doing that alone would be super helpful and super supportive for any Iranians. As I said, like, we are all going through this collective trauma on every day, and we all have families back in Iran, and we are all always worried of what could happen next. And but this shouldn't stop. This is definitely a beginning to an end. I know that there is going to be probably a lot more of these bad news coming out, but if nothing has happened, all those lives has gone for nothing. So we are really hoping, and we are really hopeful that this led to something. And there's been many movements in Iran. There's been grief movements in Iran and so many other movements in Iran, but nothing like this one has ever spread out to the whole world, and nothing like this, that the women are actually leading this protest. And and with them are actually the men on the street, are actually the men that are protecting their mothers, their sisters, their daughters. And that collaboration is what's going to lead to something. And that union between the people in Iran is something unique that I personally haven't really seen for the last 4 decades. To see such collaboration between people and such unity between people to create a change and advocate for their rights. And it's only basic human rights too, honestly. It's just like what to wear and freedom of expression and just be who you are. But if you're dictated all the time for what you think, what you say, what you wear, that's not right. And that can't be happening in 21st centuries. And these should be issues that nobody has ever to think about. And again, this is not only in Iran, it's in many countries in the region and other countries too. And that needs to stop. Like in this day and age, we have other I wish that we had other voice to think about other than simple matters such as. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you, Baran. This was definitely a very difficult topic. And as you said, the collective trauma is something that's impacting you as well. And for us not having familial ties back in Iran, we can only, fathom what it might be like, but it's not the same as experiencing it. So I truly appreciate from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure my colleagues echo the sentiment as well, to be touching on such a difficult topic and sharing that with us. And with that, we will move on to our next speaker for today. And that would be someone whose dream is to inspire everyone to volunteer. And having been exposed to different educational standards, such as in a city and a village, Karthi Vidya observed that there were differences in the quality of education. And this is what inspired him to start Team Everest fresh out of college. And today, Karthi's organization, Team Everest, is one of India's largest youth-run NGOs with over 25,000 volunteers who help provide quality education to financially challenged children. His extensive experience working with low-income and often single-parent families has also exposed him to many survivors of violence and their children. So joining us from Chennai in India, Karthi will be presenting to us the role of education such that it eliminates the violence against women. Karthi, the stage is yours.
Hi all. Banu, thank you so much for giving this opportunity and making this introduction also. Hi all, I am Karthi Vidya. I'm the founder and CEO of a non-profit organization called Team Everest. I started this organization when I'm fresh out of college in 2006. Basically, I studied in a village till my 10th grade, 11th and 12th standard, I studied in a city. And I saw there's a huge difference, the quality of education with what a financially poor child gets, or what a child in a village gets and what a child in a city gets. I understood, there's a lot of inequality at that stage itself. And I strongly believe every child should have equal access to education. And that's what actually inspired me to start this non-profit organization. So I've been in this field for the past 16 years. Today, we have worked with more than 1 lakh volunteers, touched the life of million children till date. So today I am here actually to come and talk about preventing women abuse through education, actually, because almost 75%, 3/4 of the beneficiaries are actually girls. And I have worked with a lot of school children, college children, and we have worked with a lot of mothers actually. And we have seen, how their life has changed after that abuse has actually happened. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So I'm going to talk about 3 topics today. To start with, I'm going to talk about how we could, giving education is the #1 priority in stopping violence against women, actually, why education is very, very important. So let me talk about one of our initiative. It's called a Smile 100. So what we have done is, I used to work in a corporate till 2015, 2014. I quit my job. I came out. After quitting my job, the first initiative I started is called Smile 100. It's in my native because I have visited more than 1,000 schools in India, across the country. And every school I go, I've seen, like almost 5 to 10% of the children were parentless and single parented students. And when I turned around 29, 30, I lost both my parents, and it was very hard for me. I felt, like if a child loses their parents at a very young age, who's going to educate those children? That question was disturbing me so much. So I decided to go and identify these kinds of parentless children, single parented children in my native in India, and sponsor these children for their education. So I went back to my native. We went to every streets. We had a microphone. We were announcing, like we are ready to give scholarships. And if anyone is a parentless child or a single parented child, they can come and apply for the scholarship. And that year we got around 184 people. 184 people came coming and applying for the scholarship. And we identify 100 children who are right from class 1st to class 8. We identify children, and we started giving scholarship to these children. To like our vision for the Smile 100 program is to sponsor these children right from kindergarten till their college, till they finish their college. And that's when actually, like I met lot of women, actually their parents, who actually got like met with abuse, and they didn't even knew that they are getting abused in their life. So I want to give you a couple of stories. The first story I want to tell you is a story of a student called Hemalata. So what has happened is his husband is a drunkard. So most of the days he will drink, he will come home, he will beat his wife. And one day, so Hemalata has a brother also. So, like what happened is, in one of the day, he started pouring some petrol on these people, and she has tried to burn her alive. So she got affected in her entire neck, and the child, Hemalata, was so young. I think she's in around 1st standard or 2nd standard. She was trying to stop the abuse. In the process, she also got burnt, and luckily they were able to escape. And both the, like the mother, the daughter, and the son, 3 of them escaped from that place, and they live far away from the far away, and like without getting recognized by his husband. They were living a very secret life for almost 6-7 years. And like that was very, very bad, because just because the husband is not able to respect and give that, I mean, they didn't consider that his wife is equal to him. So they were one of the people who got affected because of violence against women. And luckily, after many years, during the scholarship, when I was doing the interview, they came and told the story. And today, if you look at it, we were educating Hemalata, and he is actually aspiring to become a doctor. So if you could see, if Hemalata's mom was well educated, she would have married a better person, and probably whenever she could recognize an abuse like this happening, she would be she would be someone to go and stop that abuse. I think the first step to stop abuse against women is education, because many times I see uneducated children, illiterate women getting affected because of this. The second story I want to tell is from the same Smile 100 scholarship program. Couple of children called Sandhya and Vishnupriya. These children were, like Sandhya was at around 4th standard, and Vishnupriya was at kindergarten when the husband came and abused her mother after drinking alcohol, and she killed her on the spot. After killing her in front of both these 2 children, and he moved away to a different city altogether. And these children were left with no mother because she was killed, and father left her left and flew away from the city. So they had no other option. Their aunt were taking care of the children. So during the scholarship, we got to know about them. We are sponsoring them. Today, if you look at it, I was invited as a speaker in one of the school in Chennai, an international school, and I love the school, and I went and asked this principal whether they can educate a couple of our children, and they happily agreed. Today, these 2 girls were studying one of the top international school in Chennai, and their life are going to turn forever. If you look at it, in their home, none of their women were educated. They could not even read, leave about going to school. They don't even read stuff. So from that kind of a family, today we are educating 2 children and the school is giving them free education to them. I think everything starts with education. A lot of things could change if we can empower women with education. So the first point I'll tell you is it's very, very important to go and educate women like this. That's number one. Number two is, I think it's giving education to women is one. And how do you educate boys, like men, that women are their equal? Women are their equals. Because if you look at someone like me, I never had a sisters actually. And I saw looking up to my mother because she's the only woman in my life actually for a very long time. And, and culture, all those stuff plays a very, very crucial role in such things, right? So cultural things today, if you look at it, all my life, I saw only my mom being in kitchen, cooking for all of us. So for me, right, as a young kid, I started believing that cooking is for women and boys have nothing to do with it. So I think, and there was no one to come and teach us, educate us, because what you see, you learn actually. And when I grew, I got married, I had my wife, I understood that, that's absolutely wrong. That's not the way to treat women. And I understood, and my first manager in a corporate was a woman. I was taken aback at looking at the leadership skill, looking at the way she was treating others. I felt, wow. And I think somewhere or the other, we should start educating boys, telling them, they are your equals, and we should give them respect and we should treat them equally. Because as you could see, many of the problem comes because the boys don't take the girls serious enough, right? So at Team Everest, what we do is, during Women's Day and some special days, we take women leaders to schools and we try to inspire boys actually, because only if we could inspire boys, because I think most of the time they are the ones who actually cause harm to the women. So I think it's very, very important going and educating boys about, hey, women are again, equals to us, and we should respect them and treat them like any other human being. And the final thing that I wanted to tell is, looking at, started working with a lot of young women. Actually, many women in India started believing that, we are not an equal to men because of the cultural thing. They see their mother, they see everyone, they think men are superior and we are not so equals. I think that's a very, very bad thing, because end of the day, is that girl, is that woman who's going to get affected because of it. And nothing to blame them, because everywhere they see men becoming very superior, and automatically they think, oh, maybe I should, this is my role, this is how I was born, this is how I should live. I think that's a very, very scary thing to be, because they are putting a box around them and think that this is my life. The truth is there is no box, it's their life, they should live the way they want. So I think it's very important to go back, educate girls also, telling them, because you could see every educated woman talks about woman empowerment and all those stuff. But what about children, or what about young girls in small villages where, and especially in places, many other countries where the culture is against women actually? I think it's very important to go and educate girls in such places. At Team Everest, we actually do a program called She for She. So what we do is we pick financially poor children from government schools, and we connect them with a working woman, and where they talk about becoming equals and all those stuff, how to handle violence, what are the things, why women, what role women play in the society, all those stuff we teach even to a 6th standard, 7th standard child, so that they start thinking broad and they don't think that we are a inferior one, or they don't start thinking narrowly. So that's one initiative we do. Also, when they go to college, we do an initiative called Call and Connect, where we bring in working professionals, connect with a college student, and we teach them to help them to think big, because most of the children are parentless, single parented, first generation graduates. None of their family members have went to college or got some graduation. So they, even though they have potential, they don't think big. So I think it's very important to go inspire these girls to think big, because if they could think big, go and chase them and achieve it, and they are in a good position in their life, automatically they could stand up for any violence that comes their way. So I just want to summarize my talk here. I think it's very important to educate girls, give education to children so that we're empowering them. Very, very important to educate boys. And finally, because of the cultural things, few girls start thinking that no, we are not an equal. I think that's a very dangerous sign. It's very important to go and tell them, no, you are not inferior to anyone else in this world. I think that's the role that we all should play. And with that, I will conclude my speech. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Karthi. That was very, very empowering just to know that the future generation is in good hands with you. Great programs. Thank you for informing us about some of the initiatives that you're going through as well. One question I did have was, I know that traditionally in some of the cultures, and I myself have roots in India too, growing up, it's always about if you have a girl child, you're kind of owned by your parents for some time, right? It's like your parents are taking care of you. So all the decisions that you need to take in your life, they are the primary people who are deciding a lot of things. So I know in the three programs that you mentioned, you were primarily talking about interacting with the child directly. So you're talking to the girls directly, you're talking to the boys directly. Have you come across situations whereby you have had to convince the parents to send the kids over? So even parents themselves, if they have a son and a daughter in that example that you gave, they probably send the son to school, but they don't necessarily think about sending the daughter to school. And what are some of those, points that you would make to those parents to tell them, hey, send your daughter to school as well, because this actually ensures a better future for her. Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. In fact, we come across this situation every day, actually. See, what happens is the discrimination starts for the girl right at the young age itself. What happens is you have a son and you have a daughter, and I have little money. You put your son in a private school and your daughter in a government school, probably, because the feeling is that the son is going to come back and take care of in the future, whereas this girl is going to get married, go to a different place altogether. And you know what, end of the day, if you understand the Indian context, most of the time it would be the daughter who will come and take care of the parent and not the son. It's the other way around, actually. So what happens is most of the time it takes a lot of convincing for us. And especially, like we provide a scholarship program called as I Am the Change Scholarship, where we identify parentless, single parented children at their 12th grade, and we sponsor them for their undergraduation. So what happens is, we get thousands of applications. Like last year, we got like 10,000 applications, and we supported some 700 children for their UG degree. So at the application level, if you look at it, almost 50% of the application comes from girls and 50% of the application comes from boys and girls equal. But when the selection happens, after that, we don't have any special quota for girls, but we follow all our selection processes and then I select. Most of the time, 75 to 80% of the applicants who get selected would be girls. Because if you look at it in many parameters, the girls get selected actually. And during those interviews, we used to interact with a lot of parents who actually, like they would have taken many, and most of the time it will be women who would have actually come to those interviews and take it up. See, we work with a lot of single parented parent. If you look at it, right, out of 100 children who's a single parented, 90 people would have lost their father living with a single mother, actually, illiterate mother. Only 10 child would have lost their a mother living with their father, actually. So in most cases, right, that illiterate mother goes through a lot of abuse. We didn't even spoke about abusing or discriminating in work, actually. Many people are not paid for what they should have paid, actually. So these people, and you are an illiterate, it becomes very tough for you to overcome those kinds of crimes also. So you make little money, you have children to feed, actually. So you come back, to take care of them. So in many families, what has happened is the elder brother or the elder sister would have compromised their education, and so that the younger kid, most of the time, it would be their sister who would be going and getting the education. Actually, I think those kinds of compromises don't get the spotlight. But I think those are very, very important, because they strongly feel that, even if one person could get educated in this family, our fate will change forever. So I think we do a lot of counselings for parents during those interviews, asking them to send to proper colleges. And very importantly, we tell them, because many people, like like some of them were pointing out, they think girls are a burden to me. So they think, okay, once she turns 21 and they finish their college, maybe immediately they start thinking about they're helping this girl to get married. And I typically tell them, when you think that a son should get married only at 27 or 28, why are you not thinking the same for a girl, right? So I typically tell them, like, that should not be your focus. I always encourage them, like, at least she should go work in some place for at least minimum 5 years after she gets graduate, so that she sees the outside world. Because many parents today whom I'm struggling, who are women, they never got an opportunity to go work independently. So they become a dependent on someone else, which actually puts lot of them people in trouble. So I typically encourage them, like, girl, especially female children, should go work independently so that they can get a lot of experiences, and anything fatal like losing their husband happens in future, they stand on their own leg and they are not dependent on anyone else. So I think the world should be for everyone, not just only for the boys or the girls. I think we all share this planet.
That's a wonderful thought process. It's like it's a world for everyone. We need to live with each other. We need to respect each other. There's no one person better than the other. Thank you so much. So many moving parts, Karthi. You've just brought together like so many different parts in the family itself, right? In the family unit. It's not just the parents, it's not just the kids, it's also the siblings. It's also how the society looks at us. So we have a lot of work to do to move forward. And thank you for that. And with that, let's move on to our next speaker. Really happy to introduce Jack Patrici. She is the founder and principal at Growing a New Heart, a group of leaders in the healing arts, moving us towards profoundly respectful relationships. Respect seems to be the theme of the hour, so we're really happy to have you here, Jack. She is an experienced educator in the tradition of popular education trained by Paulo Freire. Jack is a trained body-centered trauma clinician who has worked with sexually trafficked women and children in over 40 countries. Jack is the author of 3 books on discerning abusive relationships through Penguin Berkeley and has been in the anti-violence movement for 33 years. She is the co-founder of a Call for Change helpline, the first in this nation. I am very pleased to welcome you, very passionate Jack from Western Massachusetts, to stage. Over to you, Jack.
There we go. So glad to be here. First, I want to thank my sisters and siblings, Raji and Banu and Karen and Soraya and Baron and Karthi, for sharing your wisdom and vision and uplifting us all with the radical truth telling. I am a survivor of domestic violence, sexual violence, child abuse, neglect, and stalking, and I am well. And I am well because of community care. As my colleague Isabel Garcia says, self-love is an act of community care. And we are here enacting community care, and I am so grateful to be part of it. I want to focus on prevention and how at Growing a New Heart, we look at what it takes to transform community. So I'm going to share some slides. Here we go. Let me make sure I move this so you can see it. Okay. So as we look at what it takes to transform community and intimate violence prevention work, we're not only looking at whether the people causing harm can change, but whether we can and how we engage with one another, and how those of us who directly engage with systems and individuals causing harm cause the harm. So let's look at the principles that we're looking at upholding. This is a funny meme I got off the Twitterverse a couple of years ago that really explains one of the principles I'm talking about, which is the way sometimes we reenact domination when we're trying to stop domination. And that a theme throughout this day has been not doing that, because we know we can't control people into stop controlling people. We can't shame people into stopping shaming other people. And so this meme says, y'all be like, but y'all be like the y'all that y'all be like. And so clearly we're all here committed to not being like those that are dominating others. So I want to look at particularly, how do we do that? How do we find that place where we don't become the thing that we're trying to stop when we're all committed so deeply with one another to transforming what is robbing us of our creativity and our joy. So we at Growing a New Heart, we dedicate all our work to the conditions to reestablish or re-find our natural joy and creativity. And dominance doesn't want us to find that, because joy and creativity solves problems by respecting the wisdom of one another in a way that doesn't hold control. Here's some of our principles when we directly address individuals and systems that cause harm. We use a set of skills that we teach community members called compassionate, accountable conversations. And it's based on these two principles, that compassion without accountability is collusion. So if I just study deeply enough to understand why do people move towards dominance? Why do systems reenact that control? And I only sit in the place of understanding and I don't act towards accountability, then I'm just colluding. Even if I'm talking to an individual person who's harming a partner, that's a part of what we do. If I'm just only offering compassion, then the person believes I'm upholding what they're doing, and that's collusion. So the other half, though, is accountability alone. Accountability without compassion is dominance. It's domination. We just begin replicating. We say, shame on you. That's it. And we don't actually meet the system and the people in it with an understanding of how they got there, firmly rooted in, and now it has to change. And so our approach is that every one of us has compassion and accountability abilities within us. And some of us lead with compassion, some of us lead with accountability. We all need each other, and we all need to cultivate both. Those who lead with compassion, I have a great deal to learn from. Now, I'm in my mid-50s, and it's taken this long for me to not lead only with accountability. I feel more humanity because I have been loved enough and protected enough by my loving sisters and siblings and colleagues to have feel more joy and connection towards humanity, and have had an opportunity to heal. And now I understand that when you're dealing with individuals, compassion is the doorway to true accountability. And so finding a place for humanity in order to prevent further harm, we work directly with people harming their partners, because we have to stop asking survivors, like Karen was talking about earlier, to do all the work. This idea that survivors want to go to a shelter, survivors want to start their lives over, survivors want to, no, well, actually, they're not causing the harm. So we need to focus on the people causing the harm and have them do the work. And in order to be effective, we have to develop a skill set. Hey, it's not for everybody, but I just want to, there was a point in my career where I actually said out loud, I have personally devoted enough of my life's force dealing with abusive people. I have no interest. And then I changed. It doesn't mean everyone has the same trajectory, but if you're called to directly address people and systems enacting dominance, I'm asking you to join that. And because we need people to directly work with young people and older people who are enacting dominance in their partnerships, particularly towards women. Another principle we look at is that dominance promises. It promises a lot. When you enact dominance, it immediately gives you everything your way, but it's not a long-term solution. Even abusive people, some of them who are not totally sadistic, actually want connection in their relationships. And they can't get it when you're dominating in your relationship. But this is also a principle for all of us, our orientation towards the earth. If we take it as dominance, this is mine, I will take everything. Short term, it seems to get our needs met. Long term, we all know now that we would have been much better off if we had engaged in true connection with our earth. We work with principles. When we are teaching young people, we teach young people skills, compassionate, accountable conversation skills, and another skill set called dialogues across differences. And we teach them to talk to each other. We teach them to hold one another in accountability. We teach activists the same skills because we enact domination with each other in some ways all the time. And how do we stay connected and bring out our wisdom and joy? And we teach people by looking underneath, not just at the acts that are dominating, but where they sit. And they sit in deeply held beliefs that not everyone realizes they have. Here are the 8 beliefs. We'll look at them briefly. We have these materials online. You can spend more time with them. These are true for governments and power structures that enact dominance. This is true for white supremacy. I began my career in the late 80s looking at women and children and the stories they tell about themselves, and white supremacy and its impact on power relationships. And I found there's a dominance, there's gender dominance, there's racialized dominance. They all follow the same pattern of these deeply held beliefs. First, this belief that you can hurt or misuse people or your power or show them contempt if you're uncomfortable. Hurt people do not hurt people. Hurt people with untransformed abusive values hurt people. There are millions of survivors, millions of women that in all our humility we need to learn from, who are terribly hurt and they are not hurting people. And in our humility, we learn from that wisdom. The second value is a form of superiority, gender superiority that we're here to look at, but it also is entwined with racial superiorities and other forms of superiorities. Individuals grab these superiorities and this discomfort. I don't like how I feel. And as a trauma therapist, I'm saying, that's your trauma, that's your dehydration, that's your exhaustion, that's your untreated mental health issues. Millions of people do not hurt others when they live with those. But if you combine this with giving yourself permission and superiority, then you can hurt your partner, even though you are made uncomfortable by your boss, right? But it works this way in systems too. One religion, one sect, one race should feel comfortable because of its superiority. And then look, it's your job to accept me as I am, no matter what I do. Accept this country as it is, no matter what you do. Accept my interpretation of my religion, no matter what I do. And I have the right to tear you down if you point out something about my interpretation of my country or my religion that I don't like. And you must celebrate my interpretation of my religion or my country or my race, or how I did in the relationship last night, and not mention how little I have changed. And I will be disgusted and insulted if you make me look at things I do not know. And I always ask our responders or people I work with, how good and graceful are we at being mistaken? That's the first tell you need in a movement or any relationship. How good are you at being wrong? Do you get mad because someone's mad? And so in our movement, we are learning not to replicate these abusive values. And we teach young people and we teach older people who are abusing others to transform these values. Another that's very familiar, I can establish reality or fact patterns to my liking. It drives us mad because it takes our energies and our creativity away to constantly reestablish basic patterns of fact. Like, yes, this protest does exist, or in an intimate partnership, yes, you agreed to move. Like major observable facts, an abusive stance, an abusive person upholding these values will just make new patterns of fact. And finally, the belief that I can be contemptuous or violent if you complain because I'm not answerable to you. And we are here to cultivate the notion that we are answerable to one another. And transforming these values, that stops violence against women. It stops white supremacy. It stops cultural hegemony and dominance. Because every colonial derived nation, every nation that was born in dominance is struggling with abusive values and equity and respect. And it impacts all of our norms and practices and all of us. We're all undoing some form of dominance. and we're all committed to each other, to knowing that. We recognize there's a braid of what's happening inside of people, the ways we cope with our injuries and unmet needs, but also we're focused at growing a new heart, at transforming our values, our beliefs towards equity and respect, which says essentially, if I'm uncomfortable, I won't be dangerous. I will be answerable to you. I will be humble and continually learn. I must act with humility and curiosity if you point out things I don't know. So we hold organizations, government organizations, community-based organizations, municipalities, youth, and partners to these same values and to the same standard. And we hold ourselves in that same standard as well. Because if we're going to transform our cultures, we need to transform ourselves. And I see that happening here as we enact and create a narrative that embodies these values of equity and respect. And to respect our time limits, I would love to talk more and spend more time, but I'll stop here and answer any comments or questions you have.
Thank you so much, Jack. I think we need to have a separate offline conversation about the secret of your beauty. Mid-50s? No, I don't believe that. But with respect to the topic at hand today, one of the things I wanted to ask you was, it's very interesting how you brought that concept of compassion and dominance in your conversation. And one thing I wanted to understand, maybe peel a bit more, is the concept of how compassion kind of parallels itself with assertiveness in a relationship. We always talk about, hey, there are certain things that I will accept and certain things that I won't. And when that kind of gels with compassion, it's a bit hard for women to kind of draw that line, but just based on some previous conversations that we have had today as well, it's always about that selfless sacrifice. It's always about, hey, I'm doing this for my family. And therefore I'm compassionate. But in the process of being compassionate, sometimes we go overboard, and that's when we allow dominance to kind of creep and kind of take a hold on us. So where do you see that line of differentiation happening, or that fine line crossing over where compassion slowly starts becoming an invitation for dominance to take over?
Thank you. I want to make a couple distinctions. When we work with survivors in a retreat series called Happy and Hard to Fool, because we want to recognize that if you hold compassionate accountability in your relationship with someone who has abusive values, they will punish you for that. And so this is not an exhortation for survivors to do that with the person dominating them. This is for community members to transform. Survivors are surviving so that they can get safe enough to thrive. But I do want to say, many people misunderstand people, women like us, or survivors in relationship, or non-binary people in abusive relationships. Often compassion holds us there because we see the humanity of the other. And then when we understand compassion has its limits, we must bring in accountability, like the boundary you're talking about. But that's what it's about, safety then. Because once an abusive person sees that you want them to be mutually accountable to you, oh no, that challenges their dominance. And so that's we are not exhorting survivors, just be more skillful. No, you're incredibly skillful already. Nobody's asking you to do more. We're looking at community, saying, community, hold the abusive people in compassionate accountability. Stay connected and say, no, this has to change.
Thank you. I think that helped. I was listening to your talk, and I was wondering, oh, this is a very fine line, and once crossed, we can get into a bit of trouble there. And with that, thank you so much. You probably have one of the most passionate conversations today, and it sounded like we were watching you live on stage. And with all those emotions that were ebbing out. So thank you so much for that powerful presentation. And with that, we will move on to our last guest speaker for today. Last but not the least, and we're also saving the best for the last. From Montreal, Canada, we welcome Joan, whose excellent work ethics and passion for community work has been a guiding force in the West Island, Montreal area. Joan's the president of the West Island Black Community Association, also known as WIPCA, a volunteer-led community organization. She is the recipient of CBC Black Changemaker 2021 Award. She also volunteers as a big sister with the West Island Big Brother Big Sister organization, who also presented her with a certificate of recognition for being an outstanding big sister and demonstrating the values of Big Brothers Big Sisters West Island. She was also presented with a certificate of appreciation in December 2020 by, I apologize, I might be butchering this name, but Partajakshin, for her commitment to helping the West Island community during the COVID-19 pandemic. She's on the board of directors for TQSOI, also known as Table du Quartier Sud-Ouest Udil. And she sits on the advisory board of CBAC, Council for Black Asian Community of Montreal. Joan does the work that she inspires the community and believes that together we're stronger, and certainly the theme of today as well. And when navigating or resetting our lives, having a mentor to guide us is priceless. And Joan will be bringing more insights to us on how mentorship can change our lives. Joan, please join us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I am so honored to be here, and I would like to thank IUWF for organizing this amazing event. What a wonderful platform. I would like to say violence against women comes in many different forms, and the first step is to recognize it. It's been shown that abuse can unleash a chain of negative emotions, such as feeling of shame, isolation, self-hate, and educational underachievement. And mentoring is very important. So you might ask, what is mentoring, and can I be a mentor? Mentoring is the opportunity for people to learn from one another. It enables, knowledge transfer from one another between two people or more, and it really benefits all. There is a wide range of things a mentor can offer a mentee. Mentors can listen to the mentor, share advice, thought-provoking questions, and so many other things. And sometimes it's just simple things as going for a coffee, having fun together. It doesn't have to be always so, for lack of a better word, deep. Okay, I will share why mentorship is particularly important to survivors of violence. It is so important for survivors of violence to know that they can build a healthy relationship, connect, and make connections that will enable them, to have a successful mentorship. It also has many many assets. And mentors can take an active interest in you, your studies, your career, your mental health, someone who shares their experience and wisdom, and that can encourage you. And sometimes it's, just around you, you could find someone who can help to nurture you, support you, and a mentor can help women speak out against violence by helping them feel safe and secure. It is also important and it's essential for a mentee to feel that her mentor knows that she can express herself and not feel ashamed or judged. That is so important, because you feel beaten down and your mentor is there to uplift you, uplift your spirits, and to help improve your ability to promote yourself and to reduce isolation, fears, and also fears of failure. And you need to know that, you're going through a hard time, but there's someone there for you. Also, in life, you can have more than one mentor. You change, your needs will change. So your mentor could change. So don't be afraid to, have different people in your lives at different stages in your life. And also for work, the gentleman spoke before, I believe it's Baran, he spoke about education. And in the workforce, it's so important to have that mentor. And as a leader, I believe it's our social responsibility and obligation to support another woman in the workforce, to help them build their confidence and help them go through challenges and to help them advance their career. An educated woman is a very powerful tool. It helps the family, it helps her, and it helps her community. And it helps to build the gender gap. Again, Bahrain, your presentation just spoke to me about educating the boys and educating the females, and having a mentor will absolutely help to build that gap and encourage them to reach their full potential as women, as leaders, and as a good community advocate. And I thank you for having me, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Joan. That was very inspiring as well. I think mentorship is one of those relationships that have been so underutilized, I want to say, because that's not necessarily a direct route that people realize. Traditionally, we always look at a teacher-student type of relationship, but we don't realize that there are so many other relationships that we can get out of. And it's also partly what Jack was talking about, in the sense that there are lots of informal relationships that we need to look out for. And we don't necessarily realize how some of these relationships are having an impact on us. And you can have things outside of those traditional boundaries too. One question I did have in terms of the mentorship aspect is that, what are your thoughts about having more than one mentor? Is that something that you would advise people having, and what are your thoughts? Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. You change and your needs change, so your mentor should change. And also, sometimes you might have that one mentor that you really connect with, and you'll have that mentor for life. And I've been so blessed in my life to have amazing mentors. And one of them was actually my maternal grandmother. I couldn't have asked for a better mentor. And in my professional life, in my community work, I've come across some amazing mentors. And a couple of my mentors have been male. And I really appreciate the role they've played in my life and the positive influence they have. So there are some good ones out there, but please, it's very beneficial to have more than one, even at the same time. One mentor might speak to your personal life, one will help you with your professional life, and places where you might say, where would I find a mentor? Actually, on this conference today, I think I actually would reach out to two people. These women are so powerful. Jack, oh my gosh, your passion. It's so amazing. And even Banu, organizing this event, you are exceptional. And this is all volunteered. You are simply amazing. The whole team is amazing, but I had great interaction with you. And if you're wondering where to reach out to your local community associations. If you have a Big Brother, Big Sister organization, Girl Scouts, sports team, where, you could have that real bond, your church, and also your school. Reach out to your professor and say to that professor, go up to her, him, I really admire you. I love what you do. And how could they say no?
Just give a nice stroke to their vanity and also get some work done for yourself.
Exactly.
Really like that. And I'm truly humbled for giving me the shout out, but I definitely could not have done it with the rest of the team here. And I do want to give a shout out to Nishanti, and who was actually spearheading this entire event. And we've got other folks as well on the list. I did mention them on the LinkedIn promotion that we pushed through yesterday, but there's Raji on the call. There is Balaji on the call. There's Olga, who's going to be closing off the conversation today for us, but definitely a great panel of people who are truly passionate about the cause. And as you said, all these people are just around us in our community. You mentioned about your maternal grandmother. I didn't even think in that line. I'm just like, oh, you're my grandma, you better teach me. It's more of a sense of entitlement rather than looking at them as a mentor. So definitely I'm hoping that more people will be inspired by this. Always reach out to people in your communities to see what you can learn from them, because everyone has different lived experiences. And I think just the array of speakers that we had today, including yourself, Joan, you brought so many different perspectives, and depending on where you align and who you gel with, as you said, in terms of your characteristic, in terms of your life's goals, I think you should definitely reach out to them and hear more of what they want to be offering to you. And there's always something new to learn every day, making your day interesting. And with that, once again, Joan, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. And I would like to pass it off to Olga for our close today.
Well, so thank you, Banu, and every single participant, every single speaker. This event couldn't have been done without all of you and the hearts of every single person that joined us today. Raji, thank you for inspiring us and keeping us together as a whole organization. So in the name of the International Day of the Elimination of Violence Against Women, just a couple of things to say. We have all a responsibility to be part of the voices of many and to do what we can do from our own hearts. Every single person has a way to communicate. Every single person has an action to take. It's not just about talking, it's about what we do. And women support women, men support us in this process because as human beings, we are one. So with that, I just want to share a little bit of a thank you to all of you and let you know that you can reach out to us. And if you like what we're doing, and if you want to be part of what we're doing, so please join us. You can contact us as the IUWF Federation at gmail.com. You can follow us in LinkedIn. You can follow us in our Facebook page where we post many of the events. This is a community of people who wants to create and bring awareness into all these initiatives. So thank you for being here today. Love to all of you. And again, join us in the next ones that we have. We're going to be organizing more in 2023. And then we count on you guys to join us again. So thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the day.